Welcome. My name is McKay Esplin, and I want to talk to you today about self-care. Before I became a foster parent myself, I earned a master's degree in social work, and I worked in the child welfare agency of our state. So, when my husband and I got the call that our nieces had been taken into custody, I was very confident that I knew exactly what we were signing up for. I was wrong. As it turns out, being a foster parent was much more wonderful and much more difficult than I could have ever imagined. 12 years after the call that changed everything, I've gained some perspective on our experience. Hindsight is 20/20 and all that jazz. You might be wondering, what do I wish we would have known from the start? What could have made navigating the stormy seas of foster care easier? The answer might seem too simple, but it's true. The one thing that could have helped the most is if my husband and I would have treated ourselves with as much love and kindness as we did our children. Let that sink in. The one thing that could have helped the most is if my husband and I would have treated ourselves with as much love and kindness as we did our children. When I was 12, I had the opportunity to travel by airplane for the very first time in my life. I was elated to be going on a vacation to Cancun, but I was equally excited for the plane ride. When the much anticipated day arrived and I finally boarded the airplane, something happened that surprised me. My excitement shifted and made room for fear. Excited, yet scared, scared, yet excited. Just before takeoff, the flight attendant stood at the front of the plane and began explaining the safety procedures should we, heaven forbid, run into any problems. This is where excitement left altogether. She said something that I thought was absolutely absurd, insane even. She instructed my parents to put on their own oxygen masks before putting on mine. I remember turning to my mom and saying something like, "You're not going to do that right. You're going to put mine on first." Because that's what good mothers do after all, and I have a very good mother. My mom patiently explained that because she loved me so much, she would need to put her oxygen mask on first. Only if she were alive and breathing would she be able to make sure that my needs were met. 30 years later, I can certainly understand the wisdom in that line of thinking, but at the time, it didn't make me feel any better. Learning how to take care of ourselves and making self-care a priority in our busy lives is difficult. I get it. I live it. The day-to-day grind of caring for children is stressful. Add to that caring for children who have trauma histories, and the stress is understandably magnified. As you might expect, this can take an emotional and physical toll on foster parents. Meeting the needs of the children in their care can be so all-consuming that sometimes foster parents fail to meet their own needs and put themselves last. This, of course, is a mistake. To be healthy themselves, children need healthy families. But when we neglect ourselves, we may suddenly find that we're exhausted, drained, overwhelmed, resentful, and unable to take joy in the good work we do, none of which is healthy. Just like an oxygen mask on an airplane, it is imperative that we understand the importance of caring for ourselves so that we can then care for others. I recently heard something that rang so loudly of truth that I haven't been able to get it out of my mind. It went something like this: we can't show compassion to others unless we can treat ourselves compassionately. That's what I'd like to talk to you about today, treating yourselves with compassion. And most important, I want to help you understand that you are worthy of your own compassion. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we understand that we are vulnerable. And because we are vulnerable, we are impacted by the trauma histories of the children we care for. This is called secondary traumatic stress. As the secondary in the name suggests, secondary traumatic stress is indirect. It is trauma that results from exposure to someone else's trauma or to their trauma reactions. It is when we take the pain of our child's traumatic experience and we internalize that pain. Some researchers believe that dealing with the pain of children makes people particularly vulnerable to secondary traumatic stress. This makes sense to me. It is difficult to know that in many cases, the children we care for have experienced very traumatic things. So, who is vulnerable to secondary traumatic stress? Well, we all are, but women, very empathetic people, and those who have an unresolved trauma history themselves seem to be most at risk. So, does that mean that only men, apathetic people, and those who have no trauma history should become foster parents? Of course not. What it does mean is that we need to be aware of our vulnerabilities. For example, we must consider our own trauma histories and the possibility that caring for traumatized children may bring up thoughts and feelings that are difficult for us. This can cause us to lose perspective and have trouble differentiating our own experiences from the child's. Sometimes this causes us to respond inappropriately, over or maybe underreacting to our child's trauma-related behaviors. When we start to feel overwhelmed from secondary traumatic stress, we can do a few things to help. First, we can remind ourselves that children are now in a safe place. What happened to them is in the past, and they are now in a place where their healing can begin. Second, remember that the children we care for have strengths, and then focus and build upon those strengths. If the child's trauma is a reminder of our own, it is important to recognize the connection between our reactions and our own trauma history. Open and honest communication with a caseworker about what you're experiencing is important. Third, reach out for help. You may need to participate in trauma-focused therapy to help you work through the impact that your trauma history has had on your life and your relationship with your child. Foster parents voluntarily put themselves in a tough position. On the one hand, they are expected to welcome unfamiliar children into their home, invest in them emotionally and physically, and then help them through a difficult time. On the other hand, this intense investment is supposed to be temporary. When the placement ends, foster parents often struggle with feelings of grief and loss. It is important that foster parents acknowledge the pain of that loss in order for them to begin to work through their own grief. Of course, this is often easier said than done. Let's focus a bit on some barriers to processing grief and loss in no particular order. One barrier is dissonance that comes when foster parents experience mixed feelings about children who leave their homes, particularly those who are prone to act out. Parents may feel relieved on one hand, yet feel a profound sense of loss and sadness on the other. Working through this barrier begins by understanding that mixed feelings are natural. Another barrier to processing grief when a child leaves our homes is the perceived or vocalized expectations of others. You shouldn't get too attached to them, they're just going to leave. Or, you knew what you were signing up for. Or even the dreaded, you'll get another placement soon, can be difficult. Internal barriers can be just as daunting. We, all of us, process grief and loss differently. Don't be afraid to own your own process. Which brings me to the final barrier to processing grief and loss when a child leaves our home, and that is the sheer number of demands placed on foster parents which compete with grief and grieving for our attention. Having a habit of self-care at the beginning of a placement makes self-care at the end of a placement more likely. So let's talk about self-care. I want to sketch out a few specific ways you can incorporate self-care into your life. Consider creating a written self-care plan. Your plan should include things that you do purely for yourself. It should also include a regular stress management approach, such as a physical activity you enjoy, yoga, prayer, or meditation. It should include things that you plan to do daily, weekly, and monthly. When you're creating your plan, be careful to include things that are reasonable, that you really can do, and that are just for you. Finally, put these self-care activities on your calendar. If you're like me, and I suspect you are, if it's not on a calendar, it doesn't happen. So what sorts of things go into a plan? 1. Find or create a functioning support system. Your support system should be varied and include family, friends, clubs, church groups, not to mention other foster parents. Because there are aspects to fostering that only other parents and families who foster can fully understand, you will likely find other foster parents to be a valuable part of your support system. Meeting with other people who have similar experiences and feelings is one of the most powerful and renewing activities for anyone who cares for children who have special needs. Just knowing you are with people who get it is affirming. Foster parent support groups and organizations, both across the state and nationally, can connect foster families for peer support and information. Utah Foster Care has what we call clusters in each region of our state. These clusters provide regular opportunities for socialization and state-mandated training. Foster Families of Utah is another support organization. Foster Families of Utah is a statewide nonprofit organization dedicated to providing support, encouragement, and advocacy for foster adoptive families, as well as families who are fostering kin. 2. Move your body regularly. Exercise is one of the most effective stress-reducing activities. In addition to your large muscle groups working off tension, exercise improves sleep and increases energy levels. Some use exercise as a distraction from the day. Others use it to work through difficult problems. The nice thing about exercise is there is a wide variety of options available depending on your interests. 3. Eat well. Eating a healthy and well-balanced diet prepares our bodies to deal with stress. Well-nourished bodies are better able to cope with stress. Reduce caffeine and sugar intake. Cut back on alcohol and nicotine, and eat more calming foods. Now, when I talk about calming foods, I don't mean the comfort foods of our childhood. Rather, I mean meals and snacks that truly soothe and calm you by reducing the peak-valley cycles of sugar highs and lows. In turn, they help us get through the day feeling focused and balanced so we have the ability to better manage stress. Some of these foods are walnuts, oranges, oatmeal, green tea, chocolate, asparagus, avocados, berries, cashews, chamomile tea, garlic, grass-fed beef, oysters, milk, and fatty fish. 4. Schedule downtime every day. Maybe it's a morning walk. It could be 10 minutes with a paper while you watch the sunrise. Maybe it's writing in your journal before you go to bed, or even the drive into work. Maybe it's silent prayer or meditation at a place of worship. Your mind, body, and soul need time to regenerate from the day's stresses. 5. Have a plan of action for the hardest part of your day. You can probably name the hardest part of your day. Plan for it. Figure out what you can do to make it go more smoothly. If getting ready for school in the morning is hard, prepare as much as you can the night before. If bedtime is rough, set a predictable routine and start early. Decide beforehand how you will manage behaviors that make that time of day so trying. Accept that you won't get anything else done and do only what you must to get through the hard parts. 6. Laugh well and often. Researchers have found that a good laugh has a positive impact on the brain and the body. When we laugh, it doesn't just lighten our load mentally, it actually produces positive physical changes in our bodies that improve mood and soothe tension. Laughter isn't just a quick pick-me-up though, it could also be good for us for the long haul. Laughter can improve our immunity, relieve pain, and improve mood. Look for opportunities to laugh. Read funny jokes or short stories, watch comedies, surround yourself with funny people. 7. Have fun. Consider recreational activities that allow time for you to be engaged in an activity that recharges you. Activities that allow you to be creative may be particularly helpful. These could include writing, theater, cooking, sewing, gardening, drawing, painting, visiting museums, and the like. 8. Use rewards. Routinely have something which you can look forward to. Even small and simple things can feel like rewards. It could be having coffee with a neighbor after children go to school. Maybe it's date night with your partner, or even going to the grocery store on Saturday morning all by yourself, or perhaps it's an uninterrupted bath. Larger rewards will happen less frequently, but are just as important. And finally, 9, keep it simple. You don't have to do it all. Make life choices that fit your family. Develop consistent routines. Understand and respect both your limits and those of your child. Resist the urge to overcommit. Prioritize and believe that it is okay to say no. You only have so much time and energy, and you need to save that for what really matters. So, now you've got a plan. Keep it as best you can, and then forgive yourself when you can't. There are 2 things that don't fit into a plan that I'd like to mention, a do and a don't. First, the do. use respite care. Because DCFS understands that foster families need breaks, they have established a formal system of caregivers to provide temporary periods of relief. This happens when another licensed foster family cares for the children placed in your home for a short period of time. It is normal for foster parents to use respite care for an afternoon or maybe a couple of days. Your caseworker can help you give you more information about respite care and how it works. Some foster families choose to take short timeouts between placements in their home. It is important that you do what you must in order to continue to provide a safe and secure home for both the children in care as well as your family. And now the don't. Stop comparing yourself to other adults and families. They don't live your life and they're not raising your children. Get comfortable making strategic compromises. Get comfortable with being different. Your children may think, act, achieve, behave, and live differently than other children. Instead of measuring your family's worth by other people's standards, set expectations based on your child's capabilities and your family's reality. So now you know. You know what I didn't know and what I wish I had known, but knowing and doing are two different things. So to you who are beginning this wonderful and hectic journey of foster parenting, I want to leave with you this parting thought from Bryant Harrison McGill, an American author, speaker, and activist in the fields of self-development, personal freedom, and human rights. Taking care of yourself is the most powerful way to begin to take care of others. Thank you.